Natalie, let me ask you about this. On CNN, believe it or not, this actually shocked me that this guest was even allowed on CNN airwaves. It was Scott Jennings, and he was talking about the fact that in the space of 2 months, there were 2 attempted assassinations of President Trump. I know that after the first time, we all said, listen, this is going to happen again because all of these people have been brainwashed. They've been actually not just brainwashed, they've been groomed by the radical left to think that Trump is Hitler, to think he's a dictator, to think he's so evil that they would be the good guy if they were to kill him. And Scott Jennings had a chilling point about these very same people and maybe what that means between now and Election Day. And I want to take a look at this.
But the rhetoric is on both sides. It's coming from the right, it's coming from the left.
The rhetoric, they have tried to kill this man twice, okay? He got shot in the ear, and this guy was sitting up shop outside of a golf course to try to kill him this weekend. And I know after something like this happens, it's very fashionable to, talk about rhetoric on both sides. Donald Trump is the target, okay? He's the current target, and it's happening, and it's happened again. And honestly, we have to have a conversation about elections. If you lose an election, the country's not going to come to an end, okay? What I want Democrats to do, honestly, is to say, it's okay. Like, if Donald Trump wins, democracy will not end, the Constitution will not end, we're not going to live in a dictatorship, there will not be a bloodbath. All the things they say that are totally fabricated, to me, it would be a good day to stop doing that. I know everybody's talking today about all the rhetoric in this country and what are we going to do to fix it going forward. Folks, it's too late. It's too late, in my opinion, because all the rhetoric about Donald Trump over the last several years, that he's a threat to democracy, that the country will come to an end if he gets elected president again. Even over the weekend, we have people blaming him and J.D. Vance for a bomb threat in Springfield. Well, if you have believed that over the weekend, then how can you not believe that the rhetoric leading up to today is not somehow responsible for the fact that this man has now survived 2 assassination attempts?
All right, Natalie, what do you think? I mean, that's a pretty serious statement to say that it's too late to de-radicalize people who hate Trump. But I got to say, when he said that, I kind of think he's correct.
It brings me back to the 2016 culture war arguments that we would always have, where it was Democrats who were saying, right, speech is violence. And I think we're seeing sort of the legacy of that, if not the evidence that, at least in this case, it's true. When you rile up your base for so long, saying that democracy is the most important thing and that President Trump is the existential threat to it, it's how you get crazy people. And if you, even setting aside the weird backgrounds of both shooters, and I'm not talking the BlackRock commercials and the mainstream media footprints and starring in Azov Battalion ads, you're dealing with deranged people who are looking for a sense of purpose. And Kamala Harris, with their rhetoric, they easily give it to them. But I also think that there's something interesting to analyze too with all this talk about democracy and how President Trump is an existential threat to it, because in some ways they are right. I just think that they misappropriate the word democracy. I always say, first of all, obviously we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. So if they're trying to, retrofit these sort of globalist attacks on America emanating out of whether it's Davos, Brussels, or wherever, they should at least tailor it a little more to the United States. But there was a very interesting segment on MSNBC this weekend, their big democracy convention. Of course, they named it that. And Joy Reid and Alex Wagner, 2 of their hosts, are going back and forth. And they start saying that, maybe Obama came too soon, or maybe Kamala is the legacy of the first Obama and second Obama terms, and that Trump was the aberration. Trump was the shock to the system. He, quote, interrupted what was their sort of planned out progression of victory. And I think that if you look at democracy through the lens of sort of, a feigned selection of candidates, in other words, selected people who don't align with the grassroots, but are rather Republicans in lockstep with the donor class. And what you're really adjudicating the difference is, it's not no forever wars or more forever wars. It's, well, should we deploy to 15 countries or 10 countries? Should we take, neocons or a little more neoliberalism? And I think if you look at the democracy, the way that they describe it in that sense, they are correct that President Trump is a threat to that form of democracy. But I think the real error is that democracy doesn't work for anyone except the elite, except the ruling class. And I think that's where sort of the messaging is mixed. And, these Democrats never disavow their rhetoric. You have Hillary Clinton on stage just last night talking about the Trump assassination attempt, where she's literally laughing on stage before proceeding to say that it's Trump who needs to tone down the rhetoric and stop giving red meat to his base, and then saying she wants to imprison Americans for spreading Russian disinformation and proceed against them with criminal charges. So I think there's a myriad of factors that sort of influence the Democrats to get to the point where they're at now. But I also think, too, when the Democrats, and believe me, established Republicans too, but when Democrats have been in bed for so long with actual authoritarian regimes, I'm looking at you, Hunter Biden and the Chinese Communist Party, I always joke, that's sort of the circumstantial evidence that there's foreign corruption and collusion going on, because I think these American politicians have seen, and I think, frankly, they're envious of the power, the sort of artificial power that these dictatorial regimes like the Chinese Communist Party, like Xi Jinping have. And their attacks, like you were so right on, against President Trump for being a dictator really are just a projection of sort of their inner desire, their wishes that they could be dictators, because at the end of the day, that's how they act in action. And we know actions speak louder than words.
And by the way, when Hillary Clinton cackles like a witch at the idea of somebody facing attempted murder, it really gives me the creeps, because I feel like has a little too much intimate knowledge of exactly that sort of situation. The other thing, I think you're exactly right. I think that's really good analysis. I think, too, that Democrats, especially the ones that are Marxists, which most of the ruling class Democrats at this point are Marxists, they embrace a Marxist ideology, whether they admit it or not. Many of them don't admit it, but all their policies line up to that. They just lie. They use the word democracy because it's a word that has a positive connotation to all of us, because while yes, we have a constitutional republic, we democratically, in a sense, elect our politicians, and it's a word that resonates. And so they just lie and say our democracy is on the line because they know people will associate that with the way that we live our lives, individual liberties, freedoms, our families, our communities, being part of a system of self-governance. And so I wouldn't put it past them just to straight up tell a falsehood.